Hi guys, what's up? This is Nachos, and in this video we're going to discuss second barreling as 3-bet pot in position pre-flop raiser, and I'm going to tell you exactly why you are currently not second barreling enough. What we're going to do first is I'm going to present you guys some data, and then we'll just dive into a bunch of hands that I played recently at 200 NL Russian cash to kind of show you how often you need to barrel, how aggressive you can go, and try to put everything that we can see in the data here into practice. So if we look at the data, then there's a couple of things. First of all, let's take the perspective of the aggressor as the 3-better pre-flop and c-betting the flop, and then we have the option to second barrel. And over the last 4 or 5 years, I've done a couple of hundred database reviews, and I think the amount of players that matched Pio's frequency on this node is less than 5%. Most players barrel significantly less. Some barrel a little bit less, but pretty much everyone doesn't meet Pio's frequency of 57% here. You can see here the pool on average is at 51, which is pretty similar to how often the pool barrels in single rest pots. The difference is that in single rest pots, the solver is also not barreling as often, and that has to do with the fact that ranges are narrower, range advantage is usually a bit more prominent and more significant, and so the tighter the ranges, generally the more you're going to be c-betting the turn. So for instance, in single rest pots, less often than 3-bet pots, 3-bet pots less often than in 4-bet pots, simply because of the fact that you'll have a high concentration of those very strong top overpairs on most textures, and that is going to be the driving factor between barreling or not barreling the turn at a reasonable frequency. Now, when I do database reviews, one thing that I see is, okay, they're not barreling often enough, but then the other thing is that usually this leads to them overfolding the river. So what ends up happening is they don't find enough barrels on the turn with air, and then their air gets sort of hitting in the check-back range, and they end up overfolding. So the two problems, one is checking back too weak, and that leads you to overfolding the river. The other one is you're not taking advantage of an overfolded spot. And as we can see here, as the defender, the pool is overfolding versus most sizes on the turn. This is a 160 million hand database where we plotted Pio's frequencies and then how often does the pool fold in relationship to that. So for a bet 75 on the turn, Pio's on average at 45 and then the pool is at 49. If you node log this, then you're just going to be betting at a very high frequency on the turn, much more frequent on average than the 57 that Pio's betting. But regardless, most players don't even reach that. So first step would be increase your barrel frequency, try to reach Pio's frequency, check if you're even getting close. And then the next step would be barrel a little bit too often instead of not often enough. All right, so in the next part of the video, we're just going to put everything into practice. I'm just going to load up the hand replayer, and we're going to just browse through a bunch of hands that I've played recently. All right, so here we are with the hand replayer. I'm not going to do any sims. I'm just going to speed run through 10, 20 hands and kind of show you guys my thoughts and ideas. Some of them might be wrong. You might be able to run a sim and prove me wrong one way or another, but that's fine. Here, I don't need to bet at a particularly high frequency. Depending on the player type, I will be betting more or less. On average, probably I'm betting a bit too often, especially when you bet something like this. And then on the turn here, I think my hand can check back quite often, but still has a low betting frequency. And I would probably bet too often in practice versus most of the pool. Versus some players, I'm going to just play more balanced. Or I don't know, like versus quarter of the pool, that's pretty decent. I'm going to play more balanced, and then versus the majority of the pool, I would be betting too often. So this is apparently one of the better players. And then here, I think he makes me indifferent more or less, but I think probably what is lacking is stuff like overcards. And when I say he, I mean the pool for the sizing. And so I think we are probably in practice better off folding. I have no idea who this was. I can't remember this hand. So it might be that I called here because I thought this player might overbluff, but usually I just fold here, I think. Here, 3-betting versus quite likely recreational. Here we just check back, like we have the mid over range. Maybe this is a low betting frequency merge type hand. But in general, I think this is fine. And we just call and split. Ace, high pair texture. I'm just betting range, playing a relatively simple game here. Checking back, and then on the river I'm going to be relatively careful here versus most players in this pool. Pool doesn't really bluff often enough. They're not changing hands into a bluff, so kind of depending on the sizing here, I think I would potentially lean towards folding. Although probably just going to call mostly, to be honest. Like it's relatively, like if he starts folding or overbetting, maybe versus some players I would fold, but versus anyone half decent, I'd probably. And this is probably a value bet on the river. It feels like this probably is a missed value bet. I am tempted to check this though, because I think when we split the ace, I wasn't going to check any sims. All right, I wasn't going to check any sims, but here we are. Just wanted to do a quick check. So first of all, there should be leads here. I would have never guessed that. I don't think my opponent will find those. And my ace then is just checking back pure. Let's say the river was a queen of clubs. Interesting, he should be betting with a bunch of ace x here. I think most players would not find those bets at this frequency. Our ace 10 is just a pure check back. Nice. And in practice, so like I think there are two things. One is like, okay, there's a pure check back in practice. The other is now this is a pure check back in theory. In practice, is my opponent going to check pocket nines and ace queen as often as he should? Probably not, right? Pocket queen is pure checking. I think people will miss that at these games. Like if you're playing 10-20, 25-50 or something like that, you'll find these checks and you're going to put your opponent into indifference by check shoving quite often. I think in practice though, at 200 now, people are going to miss these. And so the range will be a bit more capped and we might be able to bet a bit more. We can see that these lower ones are betting a bit more often. Probably is some removal effect thing. I don't want to go too deep into it. I was going to not run any sims here, so. Right, so here we have a blind v blind spot. Doing a jack, and we get a shove, or like a very large overbet. I remember folding here. I can't remember exactly who this was, but I thought that like this, I'm a different at best, but quite likely this is not going to be a bluff often enough. And like I'm making a lot of pretty wide calls in these games, so it's not like I don't think I'll get exploited by people trying to make me overfold. Here, this is a pretty decent example of like finding an aggressive barrel. Do we want to have this, or probably we want to have something without a club, and we prefer to have like something like ace 5 over ace 10. Let's stress test that real quick. Sorry, I can't help building sims here. I think this is in practice just a fine bet. 7. Obviously we prefer to have a spade here mostly, but yeah, so okay, well, relatively close. Ace jack is in there sometimes. A king jack is in there. It's more like king jack, I guess, which kind of makes sense. Like ace 10 you win sometimes with showdown, but still I prefer, and then ace 5 is in there at a very high frequency. I prefer to over bluff here versus the pool at least. Oh wait, so we can see what happened here. And then here I shoved because villain doesn't really have the ace of spades very often. He has ace queen offsuit with the ace of spades, which I guess is 1. And then we're probably making some lower spades indifferent here, if I had to guess. So this is like a smaller bet size because we're not as deep. Let's see if we make this 150 and we just go in here. Yeah, like he will need to call 6 of spades here, which maybe people will, right? Who knows? Like there's some spades that they should have because they check all the turn, which I don't think they'll have because they check shove them too often. King, queen with a spade, queens, yeah. It'll be tough for them to meet their defending frequency. Anyway, bit aggressive, but I like a bit aggressive because of the data. Here, you can see I'm not allowed to range bet here by any means. This is probably a hand that would want to check quite often as it just has relatively poor equity. There's a bunch of hands that have like either a gutter, a flush draw, or some sort of removal on either defending now or defending on future streets. So like something like, I don't know, king jack with the king of clubs or something like that. This is probably one of the hands that wants to check. I think I should be barreling the turn here. I think if I'm betting the flop, I probably want to barrel the turn. If this is one of the better players in the pool, then probably I just want to play a mixed strategy on the flop. River is okay, I guess. Like, yeah, here I'm just going to bet the high frequency. This was close. Like, I thought it would be relatively tough for him to have a bunch of bluffs here, but he goes 4x. I thought there would be a reasonable amount of better aces and kings here, and not too many natural bluffs. There's some of the gutters. He shouldn't really have them offsuited, right? So there's 12 combinations, some of them check raising the flop maybe. And then we need like, let's say 24 combinations of value tops to be able to call here. There's probably more, like this ace queen, ace jack, ace 10 that is probably going to bet. A bunch of kings that are going to bet. It's close though. Okay, I think it's close. Had he gone half what I would call, but larger, I think it's folding is fine. Yeah, just barreling the turn there. Kind of a weird one where we play versus a out of position pre-flop caller. With a set, double flush draw, just going to keep on barreling. So again, kind of a weird spot where we play versus an out of position pre-flop caller. He has tens. GG. This is an interesting one. I think like checking back here is pretty good. I much prefer to bet king jack with the king at times I don't have, I guess, but I much prefer to bet king jack or just naked jack 10 or I don't know, like weaker stuff. A lot of combo draws though. Think of it, it's relatively hard if you have a flush draw not to have a combo draw or not flush draw, but like ace 5 or something like that of diamonds, or prefer to bet, I guess, over this. Because if we get check shoved on, then it's kind of iffy. Here with jack high, it really depends on the player and where I want to bluff. Generally, I would say yes, but yeah, like, I think checking is reasonable. Yeah. This is pretty close. I could check back the turn for sure with top pair good kicker here, and I probably should reasonably often. But there's definitely reasons to bet, and usually I just look at the player type and make my decision based off that. Here the ace of spades, I'm just going to keep blasting and we get shoved on, so we just fold. Again, a spot where I'm probably betting too often if I bet this, although like ace jack, ace 10 will probably bet at a high frequency, ace queen maybe sometimes. The cool thing about betting ace queen is that sometimes we get called by ace jack and win, and some ace high flush draws, some lower flush draws maybe, so yeah, probably close enough. Should be checking a lot here, but not my hand, I guess. He should be having leads. I shouldn't be betting very often here, but like this players, if I'm playing versus a capable opponent, I'm not going to see bet pure here for 40%. I'm just going to mix for 40%. If I'm playing versus a capable player, I'm not going to be barreling the turn very often. But there's a bunch of guys in this pool that are just folding too often on every street, pre-flop, flop, turn and river, and then you just want to go ham, especially if you have some equity. This is kind of a weird Russian cash type hand. This is weird. I guess yeah, I remember this. I thought, okay, if I was playing deeper versus a capable regular, I would just check back because it's relatively tough for him to call here with worse, and since they're overfolding, I don't think they're going to be calling often enough. With one pair hands on the triple Broadway texture where it's really hard for me to have bluffs. So I think I can just check back and then decide based on the sizing that I get on the river what I want to do. If I get a block bet, I can mostly call. If I get a shove, I can mostly fold, and basically do it like that. But this guy was a recreational sitting at 51 big blinds, so I think I'm just going to shove here, and then hopefully we get called by jack 10, queen 10, king 10, flush draw still now. Checking back would be reasonable as well. I'm not a strong favor of one way or the other. I just went with the shove right now. Should be fine. I have a heart, so I'm probably going to keep barreling. Even on this pairing turn, I think barreling is probably going to be fine. And then here we're just going to check back. Like, interestingly enough, I think he should have some leads here, especially on the turn. Just want to check that real quick. So we'll go 100 big blinds. So I went with 40% here. I'm thinking I can't bet very often, maybe like 50-ish% or something like that. 55. Pretty close. The ace of hearts definitely fine. He should be check raising 31% in equilibrium, which he's definitely not doing. So you can just bet more often if you want to. 8. No leads. Okay. Would have guessed that there would be more leads. That's interesting. Yeah, I guess we could be bet like the 8x reasonably often ourselves as well. So, and he doesn't really have too many random 8x, which is fair, I guess. We barrel quite often. And here we want to not have the ace of hearts for whatever reason. Ace king just betting pure. Anyway, we bet, we get a call. Then I'm just curious on this queen of spades river. It feels like a spot where he should be leading. Yeah, he should lead jam always. And we check back, and he had a7. And a7 would have made, a7 of diamonds would have made 13 big blinds here for going all in. And just making me probably fold these as well, right? Like I'm just going to call my 8x and queen x and just fold aces and kings probably if I face this in game, because I don't think people will do it with a7, but they will do it when they have king queen. So pretty cool spot. One very important point that I think a lot of players are missing is like usually you don't see these bluffs, and this one is relatively unintuitive, but let's say my opponent has some random air type hand right here for whatever reason, right? Like what's the worst hand that you can have? Like 9-10 or 6-5 or something like that. 6-5, 6-5 of clubs. Let's say my opponent has 6-5 of clubs. Check is worth 0.2. All in is worth 32. Then still they will likely, like they probably won't have it here, but they will likely not bet this because they're afraid to get snapped off by ace queen or an 8. Like he's never going to fold a boat, but you're not making them both indifferent. You're making pocket kings and aces indifferent, and those hands are going to be folding quite likely. So first of all, you'd likely get an overfold here if your opponent is folding kings and aces at least a little bit. And so there's a lot of instances where you should be bluffing, even though there's going to be a ton of snap calls that your opponent has, but you're not trying to make those snap call folds. You're not trying to make those snap calls fold, but you're trying to make like the bluff catcher fold, basically. All right, so we'll make this the last hand. Here I went with a bet. This is probably not good. I'm not sure what I did here. This is just bad. This is just horrible. Like there might be some. Oh my god! I'm afraid what's going to happen here. I have no idea. Like this is just me going into the jungle and trying something very exploitative versus someone that I probably have played with a bunch. I'm thinking I call here and he has a 9 for whatever reason. Ace 8. Okay. Maybe this was recreational. I can't remember. Like I vaguely remember the hand. I don't think I played it well. Don't do it like this. Do it like before, but don't do it like this. Alright, so that's it for this video. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments down below. If you want to join our Discord server, it's free. There's a link in the comments down below. And for now, if you're playing today, good luck at the tables and talk to you guys soon. Bye.